The beloved daytime talk show queen Ellen DeGeneres is now under criminal investigation after a previously hidden voice memo recorded by the late Stephen Twitch boss was played aloud during the ongoing trial of Sean Diddy Combs. What was once dismissed as a tragic and private suicide may now be at the center of one of the most explosive legal scandals in modern pop culture. This shocking development has rocked both Hollywood and the courtroom. Judge Harrison Trent of the Superior Court of California authorized a federal arrest warrant for Ellen DeGeneres. The recording shows tWitch's measured, haunting voice as he begins with 4 words that rocked the courtroom to its foundation. "This isn't random." He then goes on to lay out what sounds less like a farewell and more like a last will and testament. The audio in question had never been made public until now, encrypted and hidden within a backup cloud drive connected to tWitch's personal files. The voice memo was subtly submitted as evidence by prosecutors, and once decrypted and verified, the court permitted it to be played, altering the course of the trial in a matter of minutes. The bombshell comes just minutes into the recording. "I went with Ellen, who told me to smile and said that everyone in the room was safe. But it felt like I was being watched, like I was being picked." Twitch never uses the word blackmail, but the implication is chilling. What began as a trusted working relationship with the queen of daytime television seemed to spiral into something far more disturbing. The voice memo implies that Ellen wasn't just present at these covert gatherings. She was guiding him into them. He adds, "Everything was fine." But I believe she knew that one sentence sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Twitch was a popular dancer and DJ who became a mainstay on the Ellen DeGeneres show. When news broke of his apparent suicide, fans were devastated, and there were heartfelt tributes, candlelight vigils, and emotional celebrity posts. A suicide note was reportedly found, but the contents were never made public until now. And it turns out that the note wasn't the only thing he left behind in court. The recording painted a portrait of Twitch. He spoke about mysterious phone calls, odd messages from block numbers, and anonymous billionaires with expansive East Coast mansions. He even cautioned, "If anything happens, don't just look at Diddy." Ellen DeGeneres has long been regarded as a representation of happiness, inclusivity, and optimism. Her motto, "Be kind," served as the foundation of her worldwide brand. However, in 2020, when dozens of former employees accused her show of being toxic behind the scenes, claiming racism, intimidation, and mental abuse, she apologized, sponsors quietly withdrew, and ratings declined. But she managed to survive. Sources close to the case report that even before the recording was played, federal investigators were tracking Ellen's connections to a number of covert events hosted by Diddy between 2019 and 2021. Everything was falling into place, including financial records, travel logs, private plane manifests, and the memo from Twitch. Courtroom insiders described the moment Judge Trent approved the arrest warrant as clinical, with no outbursts or dramatic gavel banging. Just a quiet signature and the beginning of a new chapter in an already historic trial. While long rumored, these revelations appear to confirm what many quietly suspected. The culture of control extended far beyond the show and possibly into far darker territory. Several former employees of the Ellen DeGeneres show have come forward anonymously to share that they were routinely told not to ask questions about Ellen's personal relationships, particularly those with high-powered entertainment moguls. One source described a workplace where you knew better than to question who she was meeting with after hours, while another claimed that the surveillance didn't stop when the camera stopped rolling. She has not publicly responded, but court documents showed that the arrest warrant has been signed, and sealed sources indicate that authorities are working with federal agents to find her for interrogation. As for Diddy, who is already embroiled in conspiracy and trafficking charges, this development only makes his defense more difficult. Prosecutors may now claim that his alleged network of manipulation and exploitation stretched far beyond the music industry and into the very fabric of mainstream television. And the saddest part is that it may have cost Twitch his life. As word of the warrant spread, public opinion shattered. Some supporters stood by Ellen, citing her years of charity work and public activism, while others took to social media using the hashtag sign Justice for Twitch. At one of these events, Twitch was reportedly invited by Ellen herself, who was presented as a familiar, friendly face. "It wasn't like the show," he said in the recording. "She wasn't Ellen that night." Locations mentioned in previous witness. Statements about the so-called after-hours rooms were exclusive spaces where mobile phones were prohibited. Staff were changed out every hour, and security was provided by off-site firms with no official foresight. And we along official ties, although no arrest has taken place. Sources with direct knowledge of the case confirm that contact with authorities has been established. The chilling reality that the man who brought joy to millions of people may have died trying to speak a truth no one was ready to hear until. Now is what brings us to the next shocking moment in the trial. Just one day after Judge Harrison Trent authorized the arrest warrant for Ellen DeGeneres, prosecutors returned to court with the court played a second recording, titled simply Final Draft for East, which forensic specialists confirmed was taken 3 days prior to his death. His voice was different this time, not confessional but final. And he said, "You said people who talk too much just want to disappear, but that's not true. I know what I saw. I know who was there. If you're hearing this, then it's already too late." Further evidence was directly related to the first voice memo, which was about what else he left behind. The courtroom changed place. Investigators tracked Elon's private jet flying into Los Angeles on December 11, 2021, and April 9, 2022, the same weekends mentioned in the audio. Her public itinerary for both periods listed her as on break or working from a remote location, but hotel staff at the Highland Viceroy confirmed a penthouse suite was reserved during those times using an alias connected to a shell company tied to Ellen. This was important because it wasn't just what he said. It was also what he named specific dates, locations, flight numbers. And 2 of those dates matched previously known event dates linked to Diddy Combs. We were tracing Diddy. Ellen's name coming up was unexpected, but the documentation is too clean to dismiss, an investigator subsequently told the press, referring to the same level where Diddy's event was held. Additionally, previously sealed guest logs revealed that Twitch Boss was registered as part of the event entertainment. Then, nobody anticipated that Allison Holker Twitch would become widowed. Up until now, she had been portrayed in the public eye as a mourning spouse dealing with a significant loss. But confidential financial records showed a recent development. Payment of $3.2 million received shortly. Entertainment lawyer Rhea Barnes expressed concern, saying, "Nobody pays $3 million in residuals. That kind of money sounds like a pre-lawsuit payoff." The payout, which came from an unnamed entertainment company and was formerly referred to as a legacy disbursement, was made by an unnamed entertainment company. Allison's representatives claimed it was a structured payment related to earnings royalties and estate administration. Since the information started to surface, the court has now subpoenaed all of the correspondence between Allison and her legal staff between November 2022 and March 2023. Former employees of the Ellen DeGeneres Show began to come forward. 3 former executive producers who spoke on condition of anonymity detailed recurrent patterns, prohibited conversations about Elon's private guests, frequent references to exclusive after-parties where crew members were told not to ask questions, and a work environment where silence was expected. One producer recalled a troubling incident from the show's final season. When Twitch arrived late one morning, said very little, sat down and stared at the floor before Ellen asked, "You good?" And he answered, "It depends on who's looking." According to court documents, Twitch left behind 3 audio recordings. The third has not yet been made public. Its title is "I Gave Up." Judge Trent has said that the file will only be admitted into evidence once its legitimacy and applicability are established, but until then, rumors are growing. What is known thus far is that metadata indicates it was recorded just 12 hours before his death. And sources close to the family have confirmed it was saved on a password-protected drive that was only recently accessed through forensic recovery. The FBI has since classified its entire contents, but two transcribed lines have. The part that hurts the most is that, since the arrest warrant was unsealed, Ellen has not made any public appearances. Her attorneys have released a statement calling the charges deeply misguided and completely unfounded, but outside of her Montecito estate, there has been no movement, no public denials, no press briefings, and no scheduled appearances. The silence that once characterized her brand is now the loudest presence in the case. The trial is scheduled to resume on Monday, and prosecutors are pushing to have the third recording played publicly in court. The Ellen DeGeneres Show is no longer just a canceled daytime program. It has become a case study of how far image management can go before it collapses. Although tWitch's boss is no longer there, his voice is being heard for the first time, and Ellen, who was once the dominant voice in the room, may no longer be holding the microphone. The public's response to Ellen's eventual admission was not one of closure, but rather of rupture. Her carefully crafted confession did little to slow the outcry within hours of the video being released. Digital platforms were inundated with demands for greater accountability in the legal arena. Prosecutors quickly changed course and started framing the case not just as a celebrity scandal, but as a systemic cultural cover-up. The investigation expanded beyond Ellen and Diddy, and now encompassed the network of institutions that allowed years of deception. The headlines intensified. Ellen admits guilt, but will the industry follow? That evening, a crowd gathered outside the Warner Brothers studio lot, not protesting a single person, but grieving the illusion many had held for years. Steins read, "He danced so you could smile. You looked away when he cried." Candles were lit not for vengeance, but for reckoning. Silent subpoenas were sent to talent agencies, former party attendees, senior executives, well-known entertainment lawyers, and even local officials. Some of them cooperated, and new documents eventually emerged. Hidden in the metadata of tWitch's cloud storage, a folder labeled Archived Contracts contained scanned NDA timestamp signatures. A startling series of emails between assistants and publicists discussing how to handle potential fallout if tWitch flips. And one message sent from a burner account to a major PR firm read, "If he leaks, pivot to mental health." We've used it. Before, the courtroom was not just hearing a criminal case. 'Twas also dissecting the layers of Hollywood's protected ecosystem. Then, a prominent figure made a comeback. Although he had kept quiet during the most recent developments, his lawyers filed a motion seeking immunity in exchange for cooperation. His team argued that although he hosted the gatherings, others shaped the expectations, so it was obvious that he was no longer taking the fall alone. The sealed proffer was later leaked to the court, and Diddy went even additionally. He named Ellen not only as a participant, but also as an active recruiter. According to the document, she suggested visitors from her circle, artists, assistants, and even dancers looking for work. By that point, it wasn't just conjecture. A lawsuit was developing regarding the possibility that tWitch had been purposefully brought in as reassured and then left vulnerable after seeing too much on social media. Public sentiment changed once more, turning from sympathy to rage, and a new hashtag trended globally in a matter of hours. He attempted to leave Allison Holker, who had up until that point stayed mostly silent during the media storm before speaking in public, not from a press studio, but outside the courtroom with tWitch's family and attorneys by his side. She read a brief, heartfelt statement that said, "He wasn't broken, he was betrayed. He wasn't depressed, he was disillusioned. He loved life, but not the one he was forced to live in silence. The only mistake he made was trusting people, who mistook his kindness for consent. She ended by calling for a formal inquest into whether Stephen Boss had been coerced, threatened, or drugged in the days leading up to his death. The motion was filed that same day, and the events that followed shattered any remaining doubt. 3 days later, they were spotted together for the final time, filming a humorous social media clip promoting the show's finale. Forensic lip readers were being hired to interpret the elevator footage for Ellen, who had already admitted to moral failure, as the case was leaning toward criminal implication. The hotel suite that had previously been connected to one of the private events showed Twitch entering visibly distressed, with Ellen at his side. The two spoke briefly in an elevator. The video had no sound, but their body language said plenty. He shook his head, she gestured downward, and he turned away. A private video confession recorded by Ellen. Months before the scandal broke, was never released and was never intended to be saved. But it was preserved on an encrypted drive turned over during legal discovery. Its title is If They Ask, and in the video, Ellen's voice quivers. I told him it would be okay. Told him to stop asking questions because I was scared to, and I made sure no one helped him. Discussions seeking reduced sentencing in exchange for full cooperation took place behind closed doors. Ellen named names, gave up agencies, transport companies, investors, and others. Cameras were permitted, but the impact was so widespread that major streaming platforms suspended a number of talk shows while internal reviews were conducted. Talent agencies distanced themselves from legacy stars, charitable foundations bearing celebrity names, and public apologies were issued for ignoring warning signs. What started as a scandal turned into a reckoning. And as the industry's defenses crumbled, the full voice of the man who had danced his entire career for others was finally heard. He didn't disappear, he didn't falter, he stood up, and when he spoke, the walls cracked, and in the days that followed, the entertainment industry entered uncharted territory. As the public's outrage grew, the California State Attorney's Office opened a formal investigation into the entertainment industry's use of coercive NDAs, specifically those used to silence performers, contractors, and junior staff. At the heart of it all was the Ellen DeGeneres Show, its partner production firms, and guest lists tied to events now notoriously known as the Midnight Floors. A long-suppressed truth had become undeniable, threatening decades of carefully manicured charisma, airtight contracts, and institutional secrecy. In a joint statement with her lawyer, Allison Holker, who is already dealing with grief and a media frenzy, revealed that her family had received anonymous threats and that her children had been pulled out of school after paparazzi set up shop at their house. She begged for privacy and warned that those who want this to be buried aren't done yet. They've lost their shield, so now they'll go after the witnesses, and she wasn't wrong. Within a week, 2 former assistants who had testified about duties events withdrew their statements, one citing intimidation and the other disappeared from all online platforms. Meanwhile, a well-known Hollywood fixer-a handwritten letter arrived at the courthouse postmarked from Nevada with no return address, describing a party in 2017 with eerily similar details, including dark windows, mandatory phone drop-offs, and Ellen giving instructions to the room. The unnamed writer concluded, "I thought I was alone. Now I know I'm not." The alleged expert in erasing digital evidence, who was discovered to have erased online traces of party guests and photos from multiple servers, invoked the Fifth Amendment. When questioned by federal agents, in response, a new organization called the Artist Integrity Review Board was established. This group is made up of legal professionals, former performers, and trauma experts. Its goal is to provide a safe channel for victims to report abuse without fear of retaliation. Within weeks, submissions soared beyond capacity. Ellen is currently under court-ordered silence and is formally charged with obstruction of justice and conspiracy to suppress evidence. However, the most dramatic moment occurred during sentencing when she failed to bring a lawyer. A memorial service was held in downtown Los Angeles on what would have been Stephen Boss's 42nd birthday. She didn't read from a prepared statement. Instead, she walked to the microphone and said, "I stopped listening when I should have started. I laughed when I should have asked, and I'll carry that forever. No tears, no excuses." She was sentenced to 2 years of restricted liberty, a monitored residence program, financial restitution to victims, and full cooperation with ongoing investigations. Some called it lenient, while others saw it as a necessary first step for those closest to their loved ones. When he stood on stage, Ellison said he wasn't a headline, he wasn't a hashtag, he was a father, a creator, a friend, and today we dance. Not because he's gone, but because his story was finally heard. The audience echoed back, he didn't give up. The story changed forever, and Stephen Boss would never again be remembered as a man who broke.